The crisp autumn air carried a bitter chill as the sun began its slow descent over the small town of Cedarville, a quiet Midwestern town where the streets told stories of better days. Storefronts with peeling paint and empty window displays reflected the town's slow decline, a place where families who had once thrived now faced layoffs, mounting bills, and dwindling hope. The camera followed a lone figure moving cautiously along the cracked sidewalks, a girl whose presence seemed almost ethereal in her quiet resilience. Lily Thompson, 17, navigated the streets with a careful, practiced grace. She was thin, her clothes layered yet worn, and her eyes were the sharp, observant kind that missed nothing, betraying a mind far older than her years. Despite the hardship etched into her every movement, there was a flicker of determination that suggested she had not yet surrendered to the weight of the world. Her morning began like any other, finding loose change under park benches, searching through trash bins for scraps, and weaving around the commuters in their shiny cars heading to the corporate offices that dotted the outskirts of the town. Lily's stomach grumbled, but her pride kept her from begging. She had learned early on that the world was quick to dismiss the homeless, quick to assume they were lazy or dishonest, and she had no intention of reinforcing that stereotype. Yet, her own past constantly haunted her, shaping the cautious but steadfast young woman she had become. Memories of her mother's gentle hands as she tucked her into bed, of whispered bedtime stories about hope and perseverance, surfaced like fragile petals in her mind. Her mother had passed away when Lily was just 13, leaving her adrift in a foster system that offered little more than temporary shelter and paperwork, and even less in terms of warmth. Each home had been a temporary fix, each social worker's promise a fading echo. Her father, she rarely thought of him, but the ache of his absence was a constant companion, a shadow that followed her even on the sunniest days. As Lily walked past the closed shops, the camera captured small details: a "help wanted" sign fading in the window, a stray cat prowling for scraps, a newspaper blowing across the street, headlines about corporate mergers and celebrity scandals that seemed light years away from her reality. She paused near the corner of Main Street and Oak Avenue, where the golden light of the afternoon sun illuminated a small cafe with warm aromas spilling into the street. People were laughing and chatting over lattes, their lives orderly and predictable, untouched by the harshness that marked Lily's days. The contrast was stark, almost painful to witness, but it also fueled a small ember of longing inside her, a hope that somewhere, life could be different. Lily's journey through the town was punctuated by small acts of kindness she clung to, like threads of hope. Mrs. Grayson, the owner of the local bakery, had slipped her a stale muffin more than once, a gesture of human warmth in a world that often ignored her. A retired teacher at the public library occasionally allowed her to read inside, giving her refuge from the biting cold and a sense of normalcy. These fleeting moments of connection reminded Lily that people were capable of compassion, even in the harshest of circumstances. Yet, she remained cautious, her trust hard-earned and her heart wary of the wealthy or influential figures who often saw her as nothing more than a problem to be solved. As she approached the intersection near the cafe, a sudden movement caught her attention. A young woman in her 20s, dressed in a tailored coat and carrying a leather purse with a gold emblem, stepped hurriedly onto the sidewalk, distracted by her phone. The purse slipped from her hand without her noticing, landing softly on the pavement a few feet away from Lily. Time seemed to slow. Lily knelt down instinctively, her fingers brushing the leather, feeling the weight of something far beyond her usual grasp. The purse was beautiful, expensive, and immaculate, every detail a reminder of a life Lily could only imagine. She paused, a flicker of doubt crossing her features. The instinct to pocket it, to trade it for a warm meal or a night in a safe shelter, whispered at the edge of her consciousness. Yet, as quickly as the thought arose, she dismissed it. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind, gentle but firm: "Do what is right, even when no one is watching." Lily's hand gripped the purse firmly, her decision made before the owner even noticed its absence. Her inner dialogue reflected years of survival tempered by an unbroken moral compass. She understood that returning the purse could change nothing for her materially, but the choice was symbolic. It was a statement of who she was, a testament to her integrity. The young woman, oblivious to the loss, walked past, her attention still absorbed by her phone. Lily's heart pounded, not with fear, but with the quiet intensity of someone on the brink of stepping into a new chapter. She rose to follow, clutching the purse carefully, every step measured, aware of the stakes she could not yet fully see. The camera lingered on the streets behind her, the worn brick of the cafe, the distant hum of traffic, the golden leaves scattering in the wind, all forming a cinematic backdrop that captured the emotional weight of the moment. Lily's world, once defined by scarcity and caution, was about to intersect with a life of affluence and opportunity, and the choices she made in the coming moments would define not just her path, but the lives of those she was about to meet. The audience was drawn into her perspective, feeling the tension of the streets, the bite of the cold, and the warmth of her moral resolve. As she prepared to cross the street in pursuit of the young woman, there was a subtle yet powerful visual cue, the contrast of her worn sneakers against the polished shoes of pedestrians, the layered rags of her coat against the crisp fashion of the city dwellers, the light in her eyes, a mixture of fear, hope, and unshakable determination. It was a moment that encapsulated the heart of the story, a young girl, navigating the margins of society, holding on to her principles amidst adversity, and standing on the cusp of a life-changing encounter. In this opening section, Cedarville itself became a character, its streets reflecting both struggle and possibility, its residents embodying the contrasts between despair and hope. The audience felt the emotional stakes of Lily's world, understood her background, and empathized with her inner conflict, all while sensing the cinematic tension of an imminent encounter that would set the stage for the transformative journey ahead. The morning sun reflected off the glass towers of downtown Chicago, casting streaks of gold and silver across the bustling streets. Inside one of the city's sleek high-rise buildings, a world away from the quiet struggles of Cedarville, Jonathan Pierce moved with the precision and intensity of a man used to controlling everything around him. At 42, he had built his fortune from nothing, late nights in startup offices, relentless negotiation tactics, and an unyielding belief that success demanded sacrifice. His office was an open space of steel and glass, minimalist yet commanding, overlooking the river that sliced through the city like a vein of opportunity. Every detail of the room reflected his life, sharp angles, polished surfaces, and the subtle hum of efficiency. Jonathan's morning routine was a carefully choreographed series of tasks, checking financial reports, reviewing contracts, answering urgent emails, and briefing his assistant on the day's schedule. He was a man driven by structure, by metrics, by a vision of success measured in numbers and accolades. Yet beneath the surface, there was a persistent loneliness. Board meetings and corporate dinners could not fill the emptiness that accompanied decades of relentless ambition. His family life had suffered along the way, strained. Relationships with his younger sister, an estranged mother who lived out of state, and a fiancée who had once been drawn to his power but now resented his constant absence. Despite wealth that could buy anything, Jonathan had never felt fully connected, never truly understood the meaning of trust or genuine human kindness. Meanwhile, in Cedarville, Lily carried the leather purse with careful hands. Each step was measured, as though the weight of it extended beyond the physical and touched something deeper inside her. She walked through the small town streets, past a grocery store with a "grand opening soon" sign that had been there for months, past the playground where children's laughter rang out despite the town's quiet decay. She thought of what the purse represented: luxury, comfort, safety, things she had rarely experienced. For a brief moment, temptation flickered in her mind. Could a girl like her use this opportunity to change her life in a tangible way? But just as quickly, she reminded herself of her principles. Survival did not necessitate dishonesty, and her mother's lessons about integrity echoed louder than hunger or fear. The story's tension intensified as Lily spotted the young woman again, walking briskly toward the cafe where she had initially dropped the purse. The woman's phone was pressed against her ear, her movements hurried and oblivious to the world around her. Lily followed cautiously, blending into the crowd of morning commuters. The streets of Chicago were alive with a chaotic energy that contrasted sharply with the calm, almost desolate main street of her hometown. Horns honked, street performers called for attention, and office workers rushed past, carrying briefcases and coffee cups. Lily's eyes, trained by necessity, noticed every detail, the puddle reflecting the skyscrapers above, the faint smell of baked bread from a nearby bakery, the glint of the woman's gold necklace catching sunlight. As she approached the cafe, Jonathan finally noticed the absence of his purse. Panic flickered across his face, sharp and immediate. He scanned the crowded sidewalk, his eyes settling on Lily, who was a few steps behind the young woman, clutching the purse with quiet determination. Time seemed to slow as their worlds collided. Jonathan's life, meticulously controlled and insulated by wealth, suddenly confronted an unpredictable variable, a homeless girl acting out of principle. The contrast between them was cinematic, his tailored suit, polished shoes, and crisp tie against her worn layers and scuffed sneakers, the calculated pace of his life against the uncertainty that governed hers. Lily approached cautiously, her voice barely above a whisper as she called out to him. "Excuse me, sir, this is yours." Jonathan froze, momentarily taken aback. The hand extended with the purse was steady, confident, yet humble, embodying a strength forged through hardship rather than privilege. For a heartbeat, he could only stare, disbelief and curiosity warring across his expression. He had met people from every corner of society, had negotiated with business partners and influencers, but had rarely, if ever, encountered someone from such circumstances who acted purely from honesty and courage. The moment was layered with subtext. For Lily, this act was simple, almost instinctive, yet monumental in its moral weight. For Jonathan, it was a revelation that challenged every assumption he held about wealth, status, and human nature. His world, defined by contracts, obligations, and social appearances, suddenly felt fragile, exposed, and incomplete. He studied her face, the dirt smudged on her cheeks, the resilience in her eyes, the hesitation in her posture, and something stirred inside him. It was an unexpected empathy, a spark of recognition that human value cannot be measured by bank accounts or social standing. As Jonathan reached for the purse, his fingers brushing against hers, the camera lingered on the subtle tension, a shared heartbeat, a silent acknowledgement that this was more than a transaction. He tried to offer words, but they faltered in the presence of such honesty. Lily, sensing his awe, kept her voice steady. "I just thought it was the right thing to do," she said simply. The clarity and simplicity of her statement, unadorned by expectation or ulterior motive, resonated in a way that shook Jonathan more profoundly than any deal or investment ever had. This encounter also revealed the cultural contrasts at play. Lily embodied the resilience and moral clarity often celebrated in American small-town life, a raw honesty, shaped by adversity, yet unbroken by it. Jonathan represented the ambition, drive, and sometimes isolation of urban affluence. Their collision highlighted the tension between wealth and poverty, opportunity and struggle, entitlement and integrity. The audience could feel the emotional gravity, understanding that this simple act of returning a purse would become the catalyst for life-altering change. In the next moments, as Jonathan finally collected his purse and regained composure, he offered Lily a word of thanks, awkward and yet genuine. His tone was cautious, like someone testing unfamiliar terrain. "Thank you. I can't believe you did this." Lily nodded, her gaze steady, refusing to be intimidated by his status or wealth. She could sense that his admiration was sincere, though tangled with surprise and incredulity. It was a pivotal moment of connection, two individuals from vastly different worlds recognizing shared human values that transcend money and circumstance. As she walked away, blending back into the flow of the city streets, both characters carried a subtle shift within them. Jonathan, for the first time in years, confronted the limitations of his worldview. Lily, quietly proud, reinforced her belief that integrity mattered more than survival alone. The scene closed with a cinematic shot, her figure disappearing into the crowd, the golden light reflecting off the city buildings, signaling the beginning of a story that would challenge assumptions, transform lives, and ultimately deliver a message of hope, honesty, and unexpected connection. The coffee shop was alive with the warm hum of a Saturday morning in the city. Baristas called out names over the hiss of espresso machines, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the faint scent of baked pastries, and the chatter of customers created a comforting, rhythmic backdrop. Outside, the streets of Chicago were bustling, cars honking and people weaving through the sidewalks, but inside, a smaller, more intimate world existed, a temporary refuge from the relentless pace of the city. Lily stepped inside cautiously, clutching the leather purse like a fragile treasure. Her worn sneakers squeaked lightly against the polished wooden floor, drawing a few curious glances, but most patrons were engrossed in their own worlds. Jonathan Pierce sat at a corner table near the large window, his attention divided between a laptop screen and the half-finished latte in front of him. He had just returned to the cafe after realizing his purse was missing, his mind racing with thoughts about cancelled cards, personal identification, and the inconvenience it would cause. The intersection of his meticulously organized life with an unpredictable variable, a homeless girl holding his purse, felt surreal. He glanced up as he saw her approach, hesitant yet determined, and for a moment, time seemed to slow. Lily's eyes met his, steady and unwavering. She extended her hand, holding the purse with both care and resolve. "Excuse me, sir. I believe this belongs to you," she said softly, her voice carrying a quiet authority born of experience and honesty. The words were simple, yet the weight behind them was undeniable. Jonathan's initial reaction was a mix of surprise, disbelief, and a flicker of admiration. He had encountered many people in his life, some attempting to take advantage, others seeking assistance, but rarely had he met someone acting purely from principle, without any expectation of reward. The camera lingered on the contrast between them, Jonathan in his tailored suit, polished shoes, and meticulously groomed appearance, and Lily in her layered, worn clothing, carrying herself with a dignity that belied her circumstances. Every detail spoke volumes, the precision of his world versus the unpredictability of hers, the security of wealth against the fragility of life on the streets. Yet, despite the differences, a shared humanity connected them in that fleeting, pivotal moment. Jonathan reached out to take the purse, his fingers brushing against hers, a subtle but charged contact that carried both gratitude and astonishment. I can't believe you did this," he stammered, the words almost inadequate to express the mix of emotions swirling inside him. Lily simply nodded, a small, reassuring smile on her lips, as if to say that the act itself needed no further explanation. There was no shame, no hesitation, no expectation beyond doing what was right. Her honesty was raw, untainted by circumstance, and it struck Jonathan more profoundly than any deal or negotiation he had ever orchestrated. For Lily, the act was instinctive, yet monumental. She had navigated a world of scarcity, rejection, and survival, and in this single moment, she demonstrated that integrity was a guiding force, stronger than fear or temptation. Her life had taught her that people often took shortcuts, that honesty could be exploited, and that trust was a fragile commodity. And yet, she chose to return the purse, driven by something deeper than survival, a moral compass forged through hardship and guided by the lessons of her late mother. Jonathan's reaction was complex. His initial disbelief shifted into a quiet introspection. He realized that his wealth and status, the very things he had used to measure success, meant little in the face of true character. Here was a young girl, living on the margins of society, whose actions embodied values that he had long overlooked in his pursuit of power and recognition. It was a lesson in humility, a reminder that morality and virtue could exist in the most unexpected places. The encounter, though brief, held the potential to transform both their lives. As Lily stood there, her heart beating steadily, she noticed subtle changes in Jonathan's demeanor. The rigidity of his posture softened slightly, the tension in his eyes eased, and a faint warmth emerged where skepticism had once dominated. It was a human connection, fragile but undeniable, bridging the gap between worlds that rarely intersected. She felt a quiet satisfaction, not in any material gain, but in the affirmation of her own values, the validation of her belief that doing the right thing mattered, even when it went unnoticed. The surrounding cafe seemed to fade into the background. The baristas continued their work, the ambient conversations carried on, but for those few moments, the focus was entirely on the silent dialogue between the two individuals. Jonathan, despite his polished exterior and guarded nature, experienced a crack in his armor, a moment of vulnerability that challenged his assumptions about life, trust, and the people around him. Lily, accustomed to invisibility, felt seen in a way she had rarely experienced, not for pity or charity, but for the strength of her character. The moral gravity of the moment was underscored by subtle visual cues. The warm sunlight streaming through the large windows highlighted the contrast of their appearances, the soft murmur of conversations around them created a serene backdrop, and a slight tremor in Jonathan's voice hinted at the internal shift taking place. The encounter was more than the return of a purse, it was the intersection of integrity and influence, of hardship and opportunity, of human connection that transcended social boundaries. Jonathan finally managed to speak, his voice steadier now, tinged with genuine admiration. "I don't know many people who would do what you just did. Thank you, truly." Lily's response was modest, almost matter-of-fact. "I just thought it was the right thing to do," she said. The simplicity of her words resonated profoundly. It was not just a statement about honesty, it was a testament to resilience, dignity, and the power of small, meaningful actions to ripple outward in ways neither of them could yet predict. The encounter left both of them altered. Jonathan walked away with the purse in hand, but also with a newfound awareness that his life, structured and controlled, lacked a certain authenticity that Lily's world, despite its hardships, possessed in abundance. Lily returned to the streets, carrying a quiet pride and an unspoken sense of possibility. Their meeting, though brief, had planted the seeds of a journey that would challenge assumptions, bridge social divides, and ultimately reveal the profound impact of integrity and kindness. The section closed with a cinematic shot, the cafe's glass door reflecting the city street outside, Lily's figure fading into the crowd, and Jonathan watching her disappear with a contemplative expression. The contrast between their worlds was stark, yet the human connection established in those fleeting moments created a bridge, an emotional thread that would carry through the story, shaping their decisions, their growth, and the narrative's unfolding moral arc. The late afternoon sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Jonathan Pierce's penthouse, casting long golden streaks across the sleek, minimalist interior. The space was the epitome of modern luxury, polished marble floors, stainless steel appliances, and floor-to-ceiling glass that offered a panoramic view of the city skyline. Every detail of the apartment spoke of control, precision, and success, a world away from the streets where Lily Thompson had spent her young life. Yet today, that world would intersect with hers in ways neither of them could fully anticipate. Jonathan had insisted on meeting Lily in person, partly out of curiosity, partly driven by a lingering sense of gratitude he could not shake. She arrived cautiously, her worn coat and scuffed sneakers standing out against the pristine interior. The penthouse was overwhelming, a sensory overload for someone unaccustomed to such opulence, but Lily's focus remained steady. She clutched the edge of her coat, a subtle shield against the unfamiliarity, yet her gaze met Jonathan's with quiet confidence. Jonathan, for his part, was grappling with conflicting emotions. He wanted to reward her, to recognize her integrity, yet he struggled to navigate the social nuances of wealth meeting honesty in its purest form. He placed a neatly wrapped envelope on the table, a monetary gift, meant as compensation, but Lily hesitated. Her instincts screamed that accepting it would taint the act of kindness, reduce her moral choice to a transaction. Her refusal was quiet but firm. I can't take this," she said, her voice steady, unwavering. Jonathan raised an eyebrow, momentarily taken aback. He had dealt with high-powered clients, negotiators, and influencers, but he had rarely, if ever, encountered someone with such clarity of principle. The tension between them was palpable. Jonathan's admiration grew alongside his frustration. In a world where actions were often motivated by reward or fear, Lily's honesty was revolutionary. He leaned back in his chair, studying her, the dirt smudged on her cheeks, the faint lines of exhaustion around her eyes, and the quiet strength in her posture. He saw a life defined by struggle yet guided by unwavering moral compass. For a man who had always equated success with influence, wealth, and control, this was a revelation. Lily's past, though unspoken, loomed large in her demeanor. Flashbacks revealed moments of hardship, nights spent shivering under city bridges, searching for food in abandoned alleyways, and navigating the foster system that offered little more than temporary shelter and broken promises. Her mother's death had left a void filled with resilience and self-reliance, yet also a cautious distrust of those who wielded power. Every instinct told her to be wary, to protect herself from a world that often overlooked people like her. And yet, in this moment, she saw a chance to extend her integrity into a world that had rarely given her a chance. Jonathan, sensing the weight of her decision, attempted to bridge the divide. "I just want to make sure you're safe," he said, his tone gentle but insistent. "No one should have to struggle like you do." Lily's eyes flickered with a mix of skepticism and understanding. She had heard similar words before, often accompanied by pity or patronization, but something in Jonathan's manner suggested sincerity. Still, she remained cautious. Safety, she had learned, was rarely offered freely, it was earned, navigated, and guarded. The conversation shifted subtly, revealing layers of character. Jonathan began to speak of his own life, sharing glimpses of isolation despite his wealth, of a childhood marked by ambition rather than affection, and of relationships strained by his relentless pursuit of success. Lily listened quietly, recognizing the familiar thread of human vulnerability that ran through even the most privileged lives. She realized that integrity was not confined to the streets, nor was loneliness exclusive to wealth. Their worlds, though different, shared a common human core: fear, hope, and the desire to be understood. Jonathan's attempts to offer her opportunities, a scholarship, part-time work in his company, or a safe place to stay, were met with polite refusals. Each offer tested her values, forcing her to navigate the delicate balance between gratitude and autonomy. She did not want to feel indebted, nor did she want her honesty to be commodified. This internal struggle, portrayed through subtle gestures, the tightening of her hands, the slight shake of her head, the careful modulation of her voice, created a rich emotional landscape for the audience. The stakes of the encounter deepened as Jonathan realized that his own worldview was being challenged. His confidence in wealth and power as measures of human worth was being confronted by a young girl whose character spoke louder than any material possession. He began to question assumptions he had long held, that success justified detachment, that people acted primarily out of self-interest, and that kindness was conditional. Lily's unwavering honesty forced him to confront the possibility that morality and integrity could exist independently of social status, and that true value was often invisible to those who only measured in dollars and influence. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the penthouse, a quiet understanding began to form between them. Jonathan realized that this meeting was not about rewards or recognition, it was about witnessing and honoring human integrity. Lily recognized that her actions had the power to influence someone from a world she had only observed from a distance, and that her choice to remain steadfast could ripple beyond her immediate circumstances. In these moments, the camera lingered on small details that spoke volumes: the contrast between the polished marble and Lily's worn shoes, the gleam of Jonathan's cufflinks against her threadbare coat, the light catching in their eyes as unspoken truths passed between them. The narrative emphasized moral complexity, emotional authenticity, and cultural contrasts, highlighting how American values of integrity, self-reliance, and perseverance could intersect with wealth and influence in profound ways. The section closed with a subtle, yet powerful cinematic beat. Jonathan sat back, a mixture of admiration and introspection on his face, while Lily rose to leave, her head held high, carrying with her the quiet satisfaction of a principle upheld. The encounter had tested both their characters, revealing vulnerabilities and strengths, and set the stage for a deeper connection that would challenge assumptions, bridge social divides, and ultimately create a story of hope, transformation, and moral clarity. News of the encounter between Lily Thompson and Jonathan Pierce traveled through Cedarville like wildfire, carried first by whispers in coffee shops, then by the rapid chatter of neighbors along sidewalks, and finally by social media posts that tagged the small town with pride and curiosity. The streets seemed alive with murmurs, a collective breath held in anticipation of a story that felt bigger than the town itself. People leaned over counters in diners, exchanging snippets of what they had heard, each version slightly different, yet all tinged with admiration. The town, accustomed to quiet routine and minor struggles, now buzzed with a rare mix of intrigue and awe. In the local diner, a hub of morning gatherings and community chatter, Mrs. Grayson, the elderly owner who had long known Lily, whispered to a group of regulars. Her voice carried warmth and a hint of disbelief. "I've never seen a girl like her. Honest, truly honest. And in a world where everyone wants something back, that's rare." The patrons nodded, some skeptical, others inspired, their faces reflecting the complex layers of small-town judgment. For every admiration-filled gaze, there was a furrowed brow, a whispered doubt questioning if such honesty could exist in a girl who had lived on the streets. Lily, moving cautiously through the town's narrow streets, felt the weight of attention she had never experienced before. Strangers' eyes followed her as she walked past the library, the playground, and the park where she had often sought refuge. Some faces were smiling, nodding with recognition, others were suspicious, assessing her motives and past. She had learned to navigate skepticism her entire life, yet this newfound attention was different, less accusatory, more charged with curiosity and anticipation. It was a test not of her integrity, which had been steadfast, but of her ability to remain grounded in the face of admiration, envy, and expectation. At the community center, a group of teenagers from the foster program where Lily had briefly stayed gathered to discuss the story. Some were inspired, seeing her act as proof that morality and kindness could exist despite circumstances. "She didn't have to give it back," one boy said, his voice tinged with awe. "Most of us would've. I don't know, kept it." Others expressed envy, a natural human reaction to someone receiving attention for a principle they themselves struggled to uphold. It was a reflection of the complex social dynamics among marginalized youth, admiration mingled with insecurity, inspiration tempered by the harsh reality of survival. Meanwhile, Jonathan's world was abuzz with a different sort of reaction. In his corporate office, colleagues and friends speculated on the unusual bond forming between the millionaire and the homeless girl. Some viewed it as a fleeting novelty, a feel-good story for local media. Others saw it as a potential risk, questioning why Jonathan was so invested in a young girl from outside his social sphere. The contrast between the corporate skepticism and the town's admiration highlighted the divide between urban affluence and small-town morality. Jonathan, observing both reactions, began to realize that the story's significance lay not in recognition or status, but in the subtle, transformative power of honesty and human connection. Within the town, conversations extended to subtle acts of reflection and judgment. At the public library, librarians discussed Lily's character with patrons who had long observed her resilience in quiet, often unnoticed ways. Teachers and community volunteers reflected on the implications for the town's youth, using her actions as a lesson in integrity and courage. Even the local sheriff, usually preoccupied with routine matters, found himself thinking about how honesty could ripple through the community, influencing behavior and reinforcing values that often went unspoken but were deeply felt. Lily's friends, other homeless youths who often accompanied her through the town streets, expressed a mixture of pride and skepticism. They admired her bravery, yet some questioned whether the attention she received would change her, whether the story might invite unwanted scrutiny or complicate their already precarious lives. These nuanced reactions emphasize the real-world complexity of morality under hardship, how a single act of integrity could inspire, challenge, and provoke reflection all at once. The story also began to attract attention beyond Cedarville. Social media posts, shared by locals, started to gain traction, with comments ranging from admiration to cynicism. Some users highlighted Lily as a symbol of hope, resilience, and the enduring power of honesty. Others debated the implications of wealth interacting with poverty, questioning whether the attention she received would compromise her authenticity. The virtual ripple effect amplified the story's emotional impact, showing how one simple act could resonate far beyond immediate surroundings, influencing perceptions and inspiring reflection in both local and distant communities. Despite the attention, Lily remained grounded. She moved through her daily routines with the same care and caution as before, navigating the streets, collecting discarded food, and seeking temporary shelter when needed. Yet, beneath her calm exterior, a quiet sense of responsibility had settled in. She recognized that her actions had consequences far beyond her intentions, shaping how people viewed integrity, kindness, and the human capacity to choose principle over convenience. Each interaction with townspeople, whether a nod of recognition or a whispered question, reinforced the stakes of her decision. Jonathan, observing from a distance, was equally affected by the community's response. He realized that the narrative surrounding Lily's honesty was more than a feel-good anecdote, it was a reflection of values he had long overlooked in his corporate, affluent life. The admiration, skepticism, and debate sparked by Lily's actions revealed the deep human need for examples of moral courage, for reminders that integrity and empathy could exist even in a world driven by self-interest and material gain. He began to understand that influence was not solely wielded through wealth or power, but also through the quiet, unwavering choices individuals made when no one was watching. The section concluded with a cinematic montage, townspeople sharing stories over coffee, teenagers discussing lessons in the community center, social media posts lighting up screens across the region, and Lily walking quietly through the streets she had always known, her expression calm yet reflective. The narrative emphasized the ripple effect of integrity, showing that a single act of honesty could inspire reflection, admiration, and even subtle change within a community. Cedarville, once quiet and routine, now pulsed with awareness, curiosity, and moral reflection, a town transformed by the courage and honesty of one determined girl. The crisp morning air carried the faint aroma of autumn leaves and freshly baked bread as Lily arrived at the small community center in Cedarville. Jonathan Pierce had invited her to participate in a mentorship program he was sponsoring, aimed at underprivileged youth in the region. The building, modest but welcoming, stood as a stark contrast to the towering skyscrapers Jonathan inhabited daily, yet it held a warmth he had never quite encountered in his urban world. Inside, children and teenagers buzzed with energy, laughter echoing through the halls, their eyes bright with curiosity and hope. Lily moved carefully, uncertain of how she would fit into this environment. She was accustomed to navigating streets and alleys, to negotiating survival in a world that rarely offered kindness without strings. Yet today, she felt something different, an opportunity not for survival alone, but for connection, for impact, for learning. Jonathan, observing from a corner, noted her quiet confidence amid uncertainty. He had arranged for the program to introduce her to the children as a role model, someone who embodied integrity, resilience, and moral courage. Their first interactions were tentative. Jonathan introduced Lily to the group, emphasizing her act of honesty in returning his lost purse. The teenagers looked on with a mix of awe and skepticism, some impressed by her courage, others unsure of how someone from such humble circumstances could resonate with their own struggles. Lily, sensing the varied reactions, chose humility over showmanship. She spoke simply, sharing her experiences in a way that highlighted perseverance, personal responsibility, and the quiet power of doing the right thing even when no one is watching. Jonathan watched intently, a mixture of admiration and reflection crossing his face. In his world of power, influence, and calculated decisions, he had rarely encountered someone who demonstrated strength through simplicity and moral clarity. Lily's presence challenged his assumptions. He realized that leadership and influence were not solely wielded through wealth, connections, or authority, but also through authenticity, empathy, and the courage to act with integrity. This realization sparked an unspoken bond between them, one that transcended social and economic boundaries. Over the next several days, their interactions deepened. Jonathan invited Lily to volunteer alongside him at local shelters and food banks, and even accompanied him to city events focused on philanthropy. The experiences were unfamiliar to Lily but enlightening, offering glimpses into worlds of privilege and influence she had previously only observed from afar. She noticed the subtle differences in how people treated Jonathan, often with deference or expectation, while she was treated with curiosity and, occasionally, skepticism. Yet, through these interactions, she began to see how her honesty and moral strength could command respect in any environment. Their friendship developed gradually, built on small moments of trust, shared experiences, and mutual learning. Jonathan began to confide in Lily, revealing personal struggles, past regrets, and moments of vulnerability he had long hidden beneath layers of wealth and status. Lily listened attentively, offering insights grounded not in theory but in lived experience. Her perspective, shaped by hardship, resilience, and observation of human behavior from society's margins, provided Jonathan with clarity he had never encountered in boardrooms or corporate strategy sessions. For Lily, the friendship offered opportunities she had never imagined. She gained access to educational resources, mentoring, and exposure to environments that expanded her worldview. Yet she remained cautious, understanding the fragility of trust and the complexities of navigating a relationship with someone from a vastly different social stratum. She maintained her humility, ensuring that her actions and words reflected the values that had guided her through the harsh realities of life on the streets. A defining moment came during a volunteer session at a local shelter. Jonathan observed Lily comforting a young boy who had been hesitant to participate in group activities. Her gentle words and steady presence calmed him, drawing him out of his shell. Jonathan realized that the influence she wielded was organic, earned through empathy and authenticity, rather than authority or wealth. It was a revelation, illustrating that leadership could emerge from any background when rooted in moral courage and emotional intelligence. Their friendship, while unconventional, was mutually transformative. Jonathan began to question his priorities, recognizing that personal connections and human impact carried more weight than financial achievements or social status. Lily, in turn, discovered the power of her voice, the significance of her integrity, and the potential to shape lives beyond her immediate circumstances. The contrast between their worlds, the polished skyscraper offices and the modest community centers, the structured corporate events and the unstructured streets, highlighted the richness of their bond. In quiet moments, they shared personal stories that revealed vulnerabilities, shaped trust, and strengthened their connection. Lily spoke of nights spent on cold sidewalks, the warmth of her mother's love, and the challenges of navigating a world that often judged her by appearance rather than character. Jonathan shared tales of isolation amid wealth, of relationships strained by ambition, and the loneliness that accompanied success. These exchanges forged a mutual respect, a recognition that despite the disparity in their lives, the human experience, its fears, hopes, and moral dilemmas, was universal. The section closed with a cinematic montage, Lily teaching a group of teenagers at the community center, Jonathan observing with quiet pride, and moments of shared laughter and reflection as they navigated their unlikely partnership. The visuals highlighted the merging of worlds, the blending of experience and opportunity, and the emotional resonance of a friendship built on honesty, integrity, and mutual growth. The audience was left with a sense of warmth, hope, and anticipation for how this bond would influence their lives and the broader community, setting the stage for further challenges, growth, and meaningful impact. The crisp wind swept through Cedarville's narrow streets, rustling the fallen leaves and carrying with it an air of change. Lily Thompson walked with her usual vigilance, aware that the world often tested her resilience in unpredictable ways. The warmth of her growing connection with Jonathan Pierce had brought a sense of hope, yet it also exposed her to scrutiny, envy, and subtle judgments from those who did not understand the circumstances behind her honesty. While many admired her courage, others questioned why a homeless girl was being acknowledged by a millionaire. Small-town gossip spread like wildfire, and whispers often carried the sting of doubt alongside admiration. Jonathan, meanwhile, faced his own challenges. His involvement with Lily had not gone unnoticed in the corporate circles he frequented. Colleagues expressed skepticism, suggesting he was wasting time on a cause that carried no strategic value. Some hinted that his attention to a young girl from the streets could be interpreted as eccentricity, a distraction that might tarnish his reputation. The corporate environment, often ruthless and judgmental, rarely accommodated acts of genuine human kindness. Jonathan began to feel the tension between societal expectation and personal conviction. The choice to support Lily and her community initiatives was not just philanthropic, it was a test of his courage to act beyond convention, to embrace authenticity over appearance. Lily's personal life also presented trials. Her friends, other youth navigating the streets, displayed mixed reactions to her new experiences. Some admired her integrity, seeing in her actions proof that doing the right thing could lead to meaningful change. Others worried that her connection with Jonathan might invite unwanted attention, or worse, betrayal. Trust had always been a fragile commodity for Lily. Each offer of help carried the potential for hidden motives, and she had learned to navigate life with careful discernment. The scrutiny of the town and her peers placed her in a position where her moral choices were not just personal, they were public, symbolic, and consequential. A particularly poignant moment occurred during a community meeting at the center sponsored by Jonathan. Local residents, initially skeptical, gathered to discuss the mentorship program and its impact. Some attendees praised Lily for her bravery and honesty, while others questioned her motives and the legitimacy of her influence. Parents expressed concern that her involvement might create unrealistic expectations for their own children or disrupt established social norms. Lily felt the weight of judgment, the burden of expectation pressing against her moral compass. She realized that integrity, while admirable, often invited scrutiny and challenge, particularly when it intersected with societal disparities. Jonathan observed these dynamics with a mixture of admiration and concern. He recognized that Lily's unwavering honesty and humility made her a target for both praise and criticism. Yet, he also saw the profound influence she had on the community, inspiring reflection and encouraging moral courage among people of all ages. He realized that supporting her meant more than offering financial assistance or mentorship, it required standing by her, defending her integrity, and navigating the delicate balance between societal expectation and personal conviction. The tension intensified when an opportunity arose that tested both their characters. A corporate philanthropist from Jonathan's network expressed interest in funding a program for the community, but only if Lily agreed to publicly endorse it in a way that commercialized her story. The offer was lucrative, promising significant resources for the underprivileged youth, yet it came with conditions that compromised the authenticity of her moral choice. Accepting it would provide tangible benefits, but it risked turning an act of integrity into a transactional narrative, diluting its meaning and impact. Lily faced a profound dilemma, to preserve her principles or to leverage them for broader change. Jonathan, witnessing her internal struggle, grappled with his own moral compass. He recognized that supporting the offer might achieve practical results, yet it could undermine the very values that had brought them together. The tension highlighted the contrast between practical gain and ethical integrity, a recurring theme in both their lives. The scene underscored the cultural and emotional complexity of navigating wealth, influence, and morality in contemporary America, particularly for individuals from divergent social strata. The challenges extended beyond moral dilemmas. Lily encountered subtle forms of prejudice and discrimination from those who assumed her circumstances defined her character. She faced doubt, condescension, and skepticism in equal measure, yet she responded with quiet resilience, maintaining her dignity and composure. Jonathan, in turn, faced resistance from peers who valued appearances over authenticity, questioning his judgment and questioning his alignment with someone they perceived as outside his social sphere. The interplay of external pressures reinforced the narrative tension, illustrating how courage and honesty are often tested by social expectation, envy, and systemic bias. Moments of vulnerability offered glimpses of humanity and emotional depth. Lily confided in Jonathan about her fears, her skepticism of goodwill, and the constant balancing act between survival and principle. Jonathan, in response, shared reflections on loneliness, the isolation of wealth, and the moral complexities of power. Their conversations revealed the emotional stakes of trust, illustrating that integrity is not merely an abstract ideal, but a lived experience shaped by adversity, societal judgment, and personal courage. The section closed with a cinematic montage of these trials, Lily navigating the whispers and skeptical glances of townspeople, Jonathan confronting skeptical colleagues in boardrooms, and both sharing quiet moments of reflection in the community center. The visuals emphasized resilience, emotional depth, and the moral courage required to navigate a world where integrity is often challenged by circumstance and expectation. The audience was left with a heightened sense of anticipation, understanding that these trials were crucial in shaping their character, fortifying their friendship, and preparing them for the transformative journey that lay ahead. The sun was beginning to dip behind the city skyline, painting the streets of Cedarville in warm shades of orange and gold. The small town square was buzzing with an unusual level of activity. A crowd had gathered for a charity event organized by Jonathan Pierce and supported by local volunteers. A banner reading, "Community Integrity Day," fluttered in the light breeze, and booths lined the streets offering food, games, and educational information for underprivileged youth. The energy was festive, yet beneath the laughter and casual chatter, an undercurrent of anticipation and tension rippled through the crowd. Lily Thompson stood at the edge of the event, her heart beating in rhythm with the murmur of the audience. Today was different. Today was more than volunteering or mentoring, it was an opportunity to demonstrate, in the most public way imaginable, the same integrity that had first drawn Jonathan's attention. A staged activity involved giving lost wallets and purses to random participants to see if they would return them, and everyone present was aware of Lily's unique story. She had been invited to return a specially prepared purse in front of the community, to showcase honesty as a principle worth celebrating. The weight of expectation pressed on her, yet she remained composed, her moral compass steady amid the anticipation. Jonathan watched from a distance, his expression a mixture of pride and anxiety. He knew how much this moment meant, not just to the public perception of the event, but to Lily personally. The crowd's attention was focused, ready to witness the act that had already sparked conversations across the town. Parents nudged their children, pointing to Lily, explaining that this was what it meant to live with integrity. Some teenagers watched with admiration, seeing in her a real-life example of courage and honesty. Others, more skeptical, whispered doubts about whether the story had been orchestrated or whether she would falter under the pressure of public scrutiny. The scene was set with cinematic precision. The sun's last rays reflected off the windows of nearby shops, casting long shadows that danced across the cobblestone square. Cameras from local news outlets captured the tension, ready to broadcast Lily's choice to the broader community. The small town, usually accustomed to quiet routines, now held its collective breath. Every eye was on her, every heart anticipating whether the purity of her honesty would remain unshaken in a moment of performance. As the designated purse was placed before her, Lily's hands trembled slightly, not out of fear of doing wrong, but from the magnitude of what she was about to demonstrate. Jonathan's gaze met hers, a silent nod passing between them, communicating trust, reassurance, and shared purpose. The purse was similar to the one she had returned months earlier, but today, its significance extended beyond mere object. It symbolized her principles, her perseverance, and her capacity to inspire others through integrity. She picked it up carefully, ensuring it was handled respectfully. A murmur went through the crowd, children leaned forward, hoping to witness the same courage that had changed Jonathan's perspective and inspired the town. Lily approached the first volunteer, a young boy who had been taught the concept of honesty in school but had never experienced it firsthand. "This belongs to you," she said quietly, her voice calm yet imbued with the strength of her convictions. The boy looked surprised, then grateful, as he accepted the wallet. The crowd's reaction was immediate, a mix of applause, smiles, and tearful admiration. The act continued with each participant, some skeptical, some hesitant, but Lily's composure never wavered. She returned each purse and wallet with the same quiet dignity, showing that honesty was not conditional, not dependent on observation, and not weakened by expectation. Her actions spoke louder than any speech could. They demonstrated that integrity was a choice, a principle to be lived daily, and a value that could ripple outward to inspire community-wide reflection. Jonathan's emotional reaction was equally profound. He watched as Lily, someone from a world he could scarcely imagine, embodied the principles he had long preached but rarely witnessed in such raw, unfiltered form. The juxtaposition was striking, the powerful, successful businessman observing a young woman whose life had been marked by scarcity and struggle, realizing that character, empathy, and honesty carried weight far beyond wealth, status, or influence. His heart swelled with pride, not in ownership, but in admiration, and he felt a sense of hope for the town, for the community, and for the broader message of moral courage being sent. The audience, now fully engaged, began to recognize the deeper lesson of the demonstration. It was not simply a performance or a staged act for recognition, it was a tangible display of values in action. Parents explained to children that integrity was not theoretical, it was practiced, witnessed, and lived. Teens began to understand that doing the right thing could be challenging, especially when there were no rewards, yet the impact was undeniable. For the town of Cedarville, it was a pivotal moment, a turning point where admiration, aspiration, and moral reflection converged into a shared emotional experience. The climax of the event came when Lily returned the final wallet, her hands steady, her expression calm, and her voice soft but resolute. The applause that followed was overwhelming, yet not exaggerated, it carried a sincerity that resonated with everyone present. Tears glistened in some eyes, and quiet smiles spread across faces young and old. The moment crystallized the power of one act of honesty to transform a community's perception, to inspire reflection, and to reinforce the importance of character in everyday life. As the crowd began to disperse, Jonathan approached Lily. "You did more than return those wallets," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You reminded all of us why honesty matters, why integrity is powerful, and why people like you make the world better." Lily smiled softly, a mix of humility and pride shining through. She had not sought recognition, but she had inadvertently shown that moral courage could resonate far beyond an individual, inspiring collective admiration and hope. The section closed with a cinematic wide shot, the town square bathed in the warm glow of twilight, Lily standing at the center, surrounded by the dispersed crowd, Jonathan by her side, and the subtle glint of reflected light emphasizing the transformative power of integrity. The visual underscored the emotional resonance of the moment, showing that honesty, courage, and moral clarity could ripple outward, shaping lives, inspiring hope, and leaving a lasting imprint on both individual and community consciousness. The following morning, the city streets of Cedarville were bathed in the soft, golden glow of sunrise, the kind of light that carried promise and quiet anticipation. Lily Thompson walked with a sense of purpose she had never known before, her steps more deliberate, her heart steadier. The community's reaction to her demonstration of honesty had reached far beyond the town square. Local news outlets and social media platforms were abuzz with praise, painting her as a symbol of integrity, courage, and hope. People she had never met reached out to express admiration, some offering support, others simply sharing heartfelt stories of how her actions inspired them. It was overwhelming, yet empowering, a validation not just of her choices but of her entire existence. Jonathan Pierce had arranged a private meeting with Lily at a downtown cafe, the kind of small, welcoming establishment that contrasted with his usual corporate surroundings. He greeted her warmly, his demeanor reflective, yet tinged with excitement. He had spent the night coordinating opportunities, speaking with colleagues, educational institutions, and philanthropic organizations, all with the aim of ensuring that Lily's honesty could translate into real, lasting change for her future. It was more than financial support, it was a chance to break the cycles of hardship that had shaped her life. Lily approached the table cautiously, her eyes scanning Jonathan's familiar, confident expression. There was warmth in his gaze, but also a recognition of the delicate balance of the moment. This was not merely an offer, it was a test of her readiness, her willingness to embrace possibilities without compromising her values. The cafe, though ordinary, carried the weight of potential. Every coffee cup, every chatter in the background, every clink of utensils seemed amplified in Lily's heightened awareness, emphasizing the gravity of the opportunity before her. Jonathan spoke first, his voice steady but imbued with emotion. He explained that several organizations were eager to sponsor her education, provide housing assistance, and facilitate mentorship programs to develop her skills. The offers were generous, encompassing not only financial support but also access to networks, guidance, and long-term stability. For someone who had navigated life on the streets, the scale and immediacy of the opportunity were almost unimaginable. Lily felt a surge of hope, tempered by a natural skepticism. Years of survival had taught her that opportunities often came with hidden conditions, expectations, or pitfalls. Yet Jonathan's approach was different. He emphasized that the choices were hers alone, that her integrity and autonomy would remain paramount, and that no one would pressure her into decisions she did not feel ready to make. The emphasis on respect, trust, and empowerment created a unique emotional dynamic, allowing Lily to envision a future she had long dreamed of but never fully imagined. The opportunity was not a reward for past actions alone, it was an investment in her potential, a recognition that her honesty, resilience, and moral courage could shape a life of purpose and influence. The cafe conversation unfolded with cinematic tension. Jonathan detailed the various paths available: scholarships to local colleges, programs offering vocational training, mentorship opportunities with experienced professionals, and safe, supportive housing. Lily listened intently, her fingers tracing the edge of her coat as she absorbed the weight of the possibilities. Each option carried promise, yet also demanded reflection. Accepting them would require trust, adaptation, and courage, a leap into a world unfamiliar yet filled with potential. For Lily, the emotional stakes were profound. Her life had been defined by scarcity, mistrust, and the constant vigilance required to survive. Now, she faced the challenge of navigating abundance, opportunity, and choice. The contrast between the streets she had known and the paths before her was stark, almost surreal. Every instinct urged caution, yet her experiences had also instilled resilience, discernment, and a deep understanding of her own values. The decision before her was not only practical but moral, requiring a balance between ambition and principle, hope and humility. Jonathan observed her closely, sensing the inner dialogue and emotional calculation unfolding behind her eyes. He knew that this was more than a logistical choice, it was a moment of personal transformation. He offered reassurance, emphasizing that the pace was hers, that no path needed to be rushed, and that her character, rather than any external circumstance, was the most valuable asset she possessed. The reassurance was subtle yet powerful, providing Lily with the space to reflect without fear of judgment or expectation. The conversation naturally turned toward long-term vision. Jonathan shared stories of individuals he had mentored, illustrating how opportunity coupled with integrity could catalyze profound personal and societal change. He spoke of young people who had risen from hardship to influence their communities, highlighting the potential ripple effect of moral courage combined with tangible support. For Lily, the stories were both inspiring and grounding, offering concrete examples of how her choices could shape not only her own life but the lives of others who looked to her as a role model. By the end of the meeting, Lily felt a mixture of excitement, apprehension, and clarity. She understood that the opportunity extended beyond immediate benefits, it was a gateway to growth, empowerment, and the realization of a life defined by choice rather than circumstance. The moment was cinematic in its emotional resonance, a young girl, once invisible in the margins of society, now seated at a table that represented possibility, her integrity and courage recognized and honored, her future poised to unfold in ways she had only imagined. As they left the cafe, the city streets glimmered with potential. The sunlight reflected off glass windows, casting long shadows that symbolized both the journey behind her and the promise ahead. Lily walked with a newfound confidence, Jonathan beside her offering quiet encouragement, and the town, still buzzing with admiration, watching the ripple of change initiated by honesty and moral courage. This moment marked a turning point, not just for Lily, but for the community, for Jonathan, and for the narrative of resilience, integrity, and hope that had begun months earlier with a simple act of returning a lost purse. The first morning at the scholarship program dawned with a quiet sense of nervous anticipation for Lily Thompson. She walked along the bustling campus pathways, the weight of possibility pressing against her shoulders like both a promise and a challenge. Students hustled past her, their backpacks slung carelessly, their conversations filled with casual confidence that contrasted sharply with Lily's cautious, measured steps. Every glance she received felt like a subtle evaluation, as if her past and present collided in the perception of those around her. She was acutely aware that she was no longer merely navigating streets and shelters, she was stepping into a world defined by structure, expectation, and opportunity. Jonathan Pierce had accompanied her to campus that morning, observing quietly as Lily acclimated to her new environment. He knew that the transition from survival to structured opportunity would be fraught with emotional and social challenges. His presence offered reassurance, yet he intentionally allowed her the space to explore independently, understanding that growth required autonomy as well as support. Lily's eyes were wide with curiosity and caution, scanning lecture halls, libraries, and bustling commons areas, absorbing both the tangible and intangible aspects of a world previously distant and unfamiliar. Her first encounter in the classroom was a subtle test of confidence. A group assignment required students to collaborate on a community service project, and Lily hesitated, unsure if she belonged. She had grown accustomed to judgment, skepticism, and occasional dismissal in her previous experiences, and the fear of being undervalued lingered. Yet, when she spoke, her words carried quiet authority. Her experiences navigating real-world challenges lent her insights that were unexpected in an academic setting, earning nods of recognition from peers and drawing attention from instructors who valued practical wisdom alongside theory. Jonathan watched with pride, recognizing that Lily's strength did not rely on flashy demonstration but on lived experience and integrity. Each interaction reinforced the notion that character could transcend circumstance, that honesty and perseverance carried weight even in new, unfamiliar worlds. Lily's perspective often prompted thoughtful dialogue among classmates, challenging conventional assumptions and adding depth to discussions that might otherwise have remained superficial. Her contribution was subtle, yet transformative, demonstrating that influence did not require wealth or status, only authenticity and courage. Outside of the classroom, challenges continued. Navigating social hierarchies, adapting to schedules, and balancing study with personal reflection demanded a level of emotional intelligence and resilience that Lily had cultivated over years of hardship. She faced moments of self-doubt, questioning whether she could meet expectations while remaining true to herself. These internal struggles were punctuated by small victories, completing assignments with diligence, forming tentative friendships, and receiving praise from mentors who recognized her unique insights. Each step reinforced her confidence and underscored the importance of perseverance, humility, and adaptability. The mentorship sessions with Jonathan remained a grounding force. He offered guidance without imposing decisions, helping Lily evaluate opportunities, reflect on ethical dilemmas, and navigate social challenges. Their conversations were rich with practical and moral insight, blending the wisdom of experience with the resilience of youth. Jonathan emphasized that while opportunities could open doors, the choices she made within those spaces defined her trajectory. Lily absorbed these lessons, integrating them with her lived understanding of integrity and perseverance, reinforcing the connection between principle and action. A particularly poignant moment came during a campus event organized to encourage volunteerism. Lily's role involved coordinating peers and guiding younger students in community outreach. She faced skepticism and subtle resistance, yet her calm, decisive approach and unwavering commitment to fairness won the respect of those around her. Jonathan, observing from a distance, realized that Lily's influence was not limited to her own advancement, it was inspiring others, shaping behavior, and fostering a culture of empathy and accountability. Her honesty and diligence became a beacon, reinforcing the lesson that moral courage could create meaningful ripple effects in any environment. By the end of the day, Lily reflected quietly on the transition she was navigating. The challenges had been real and demanding, yet each small success reinforced her sense of agency, self-worth, and capacity to adapt without compromising her values. The world she had entered was new and complex, yet her integrity served as a compass, guiding her decisions, interactions, and approach to opportunity. In Jonathan's presence, she felt supported but never overshadowed. She was learning that trust, mentorship, and guidance were most effective when they nurtured autonomy and moral clarity. The section closed with a cinematic shot, Lily walking across the campus lawn at dusk, the warm glow of sunset reflecting off glass buildings, a mix of uncertainty and determination in her expression. Jonathan followed at a respectful distance, proud yet attentive, witnessing the quiet transformation of a young girl who had begun to navigate new worlds with courage, honesty, and the resilience that had defined her journey from the streets to opportunity. The visual encapsulated the emotional stakes, highlighting both the personal and communal impact of integrity, perseverance, and mentorship. The evening sky over Cedarville was streaked with deep purples and golds, casting long shadows across the streets and buildings that had witnessed countless small-town stories. For Lily Thompson, the day had been both exhilarating and exhausting. The scholarship program, mentorship sessions with Jonathan Pierce, and campus responsibilities had introduced challenges she had never anticipated. Yet beneath the fatigue was a simmering awareness that the real test of her character was yet to come, a decision that would define not only her own path but the perception of her integrity in the broader community. Jonathan had invited her to a private meeting in his office, a quiet, high-rise space overlooking the city lights. The air was charged with a mixture of anticipation, expectation, and the gentle hum of human connection. He laid before her a new opportunity, a significant sponsorship from a national organization eager to support underprivileged youth, contingent on Lily agreeing to publicly endorse a campaign in her name. The offer was substantial, promising educational resources, housing, and mentorship for not only herself but dozens of other children in similar circumstances. Yet there was a catch: the organization requested staged media appearances, scripted interviews, and a degree of publicity that might compromise the authenticity of her story. Lily listened carefully, the weight of the decision pressing on her chest like a tangible force. Accepting the sponsorship could transform her life and amplify her ability to help others, yet it could also blur the line between genuine integrity and performative morality. She reflected on the months that had brought her here, returning Jonathan's lost purse, inspiring the Cedarville community, and navigating the complexities of mentorship and opportunity. Each choice had demanded resilience, thoughtfulness, and moral clarity. This decision, however, carried stakes larger than any she had faced: a public stage, media scrutiny, and the potential distortion of her principles for broader acclaim. Jonathan watched her closely, understanding the gravity of the moment. He had offered guidance and reassurance, emphasizing that the choice was hers alone, that her honesty and autonomy were paramount. His voice carried both warmth and quiet authority, conveying that he trusted her judgment and respected the moral compass that had brought her this far. Lily appreciated his support, yet she knew that external validation, even from someone as influential as Jonathan, could not replace her internal understanding of right and wrong. The evening unfolded with introspection and reflection. Lily walked the quiet streets near Jonathan's office, revisiting familiar paths yet seeing them in a new light. Her memories of nights on cold sidewalks, searching for shelter and food, contrasted sharply with the promises now placed before her. She considered the children she had mentored, the peers inspired by her honesty, and the broader message her choices could send. Integrity, she realized, was not simply about resisting temptation in private, it was about standing firm even when the spotlight illuminated every action, every decision, every thought. After hours of contemplation, Lily returned to Jonathan's office. She met his gaze, steady and resolute, and spoke with calm certainty. "I want to help others, but I want it to be real," she said. "I can't let this story become something it's not. I want to make a difference, but I have to stay true to myself." Jonathan nodded, pride evident in his expression, understanding the courage required to make such a choice. In that moment, the power of moral clarity outweighed the allure of personal gain, highlighting that true integrity was measured not by opportunity seized but by principles upheld. The decision reverberated far beyond the office. News of Lily's refusal to compromise authenticity circulated quickly, adding a new layer to the Cedarville narrative. The community, already inspired by her honesty, recognized the profound strength of her character. Parents spoke of her as a role model for children, peers reflected on the importance of ethical courage, and local media highlighted the emotional weight of her choice. It was a reminder that doing the right thing often demanded courage greater than what any reward could provide. The cinematic imagery captured the emotional impact, Lily standing by the office window, city lights reflecting off her contemplative eyes, Jonathan silently acknowledging the gravity of her choice, and the streets of Cedarville glowing with a quiet, collective pride. The scene underscored the duality of public and private morality, illustrating that authentic integrity required resilience, reflection, and unwavering commitment to principle. By the end of the night, Lily had not only made her choice but had strengthened her bond with Jonathan, the community, and herself. The moment crystallized the story's emotional climax, that honesty, courage, and moral clarity could create ripples far beyond immediate circumstance, inspiring change, reinforcing values, and illuminating the transformative power of integrity in both small-town America and beyond. The morning sun rose gently over Cedarville, casting a golden light across the town that seemed to celebrate both resilience and renewal. Lily Thompson walked through familiar streets, now imbued with a subtle vibrancy that had not been there before. The community's perception of her had shifted, and the quiet acts of admiration and respect she received as she passed by were tangible reminders of the influence honesty could wield. This influence, she realized, extended far beyond recognition. It was a ripple, reaching hearts and minds, shaping attitudes, and inspiring reflection. Jonathan Pierce accompanied her on a community visit to the local shelter and mentoring programs. The young people there greeted Lily with a mixture of excitement and reverence, their eyes reflecting hope, trust, and the belief that their circumstances did not define their potential. She moved among them with gentle authority, guiding, encouraging, and sharing insights drawn from lived experience. Each interaction reaffirmed the lesson that true leadership and inspiration could emerge from authenticity and integrity, regardless of background or social standing. The town itself seemed transformed. Conversations in coffee shops, at playgrounds, and during town hall meetings reflected a renewed appreciation for honesty and moral courage. Parents told stories of Lily's choices to their children, emphasizing lessons of empathy, fairness, and perseverance. Even skeptical residents began to see that her actions were more than symbolic, they represented the practical impact of values lived authentically. Cedarville had embraced her as a model of hope, bridging generational, social, and economic divides with the simple yet profound message of integrity. For Jonathan, the transformation was both personal and professional. He observed how Lily's influence inspired conversations among colleagues, local leaders, and volunteers. Her presence reminded him that wealth and influence were most meaningful when paired with responsibility, empathy, and moral clarity. The mentorship they had shared highlighted the reciprocal nature of growth. While he provided opportunities and guidance, Lily's integrity and courage taught him lessons about humility, purpose, and the enduring power of human goodness. A particularly poignant moment occurred during a community event where Lily addressed the town. Her speech was simple yet deeply moving, recounting her journey with honesty, struggle, and resilience. She emphasized that integrity was not innate, but cultivated through choices, reflection, and action. The audience, moved to tears, responded with applause, laughter, and quiet reflection. Children and teenagers saw in her story a tangible example of hope, while adults were reminded that moral courage often required persistence, patience, and the willingness to act when no one is watching. The impact of her journey extended beyond Cedarville. Media coverage of Lily's story highlighted the broader message of honesty and integrity in contemporary society. Viewers from other towns and cities were inspired, sharing their own experiences, reflecting on their moral choices, and initiating discussions about community responsibility, mentorship, and ethical courage. The ripple effect demonstrated that one individual's commitment to doing what was right could resonate far beyond immediate circumstances, encouraging a wider culture of moral reflection and action. Lily's personal growth was equally profound. She had transitioned from a life defined by scarcity and survival to one infused with purpose, opportunity, and self-respect. Yet she remained grounded, aware that true integrity was measured not by recognition but by consistency in action, humility in success, and empathy toward others. Her bond with Jonathan had strengthened, rooted in mutual respect, trust, and shared values. Together, they had not only influenced a community but had created a template for nurturing ethical courage, mentorship, and resilience across social boundaries. The section closed with a cinematic montage, Lily walking along the town streets, greeted by smiling faces and nods of respect, Jonathan observing proudly yet humbly, children playing near the park, inspired by her example, and the warm glow of the setting sun casting long, hopeful shadows across Cedarville. The visual captured the essence of the story, that integrity, honesty, and moral courage could ripple outward, touching lives, inspiring change, and leaving a lasting legacy. The narrative left the audience with a sense of catharsis, hope, and the enduring truth that even a single act of honesty could illuminate the world, transforming both individual lives and entire communities.